Fraud has come with a ton interesting lore, from God to the new piece to Archangels. The only problem? This stuff is confusing as hell. Wait a minute, I've spent a lot of hours reading flavor text and talking with people from the ultrakill Discord, who've been a huge help, by the way, thanks guys, and I hope to catch you up to speed with everything new in Fraud. However, Fraud is only a week or so old. Things will change, new interpretations will be made, and old ones will fall off. Don't take this video as gospel. God is often a being of such unimaginable power and scale that it's considered rude to depict him in many religions. Not an ultrakill though. Here he is. While, yes, this is the Fraud layer, and yes, this is a depiction of God in hell, it's frankly a bit boring to just assume this is some kind of fake depiction of God. I think it's a lot more interesting to assume that this is in fact what God looked like, and to delve into that. So that's what I'm going to do. If this is truly a physical depiction of God, then that implies that God was some sort of physical being at some point. If God is a physical being, then he is perhaps bound somehow by the laws of the universe, which would explain why he isn't all-powerful. He isn't all-powerful because he can't unmake hell. He isn't all-powerful because he's limited by the physical fact that he's in this universe. He isn't all-powerful because he couldn't kill himself. God has immense power, as shown by him sculpting the earth, his creation of heaven and hell, humanity, and the angels. But he's not infinite. He has limits. He looks human. He is flawed. Well, he looks vaguely human. His strange half-melted goopy appearance is hard to ignore. Why does God look like that? Right now, I don't have any good answers, but I think this will be a very interesting thing to follow as time goes on and new things are discovered about the lore of this layer. After his creation of hell, Lucifer asked him why he did it. He asked God whether eternal suffering and torment was a just punishment for sinners on earth. God, in a moment of weakness, cast Lucifer down into hell, and upon realizing what he did, immediately regretted it. Lucifer was one of the Archangels of heaven, and is very likely the Archangel scratched out of the painting in 8-1. People have restored the scratched out name card to say Lucifer, God's kindness. Speaking of Lucifer, Hell mentions Lucifer by name in one of the Hell books, the second time he's mentioned in the game. He is mentioned as Lucifer, my love. I shall gift you all the agonies that can exist, and many that cannot. Perhaps Hell took such a liking to Lucifer because he's such a high archangel, cast down to be tormented at Hell's will, and such an opportunity Hell couldn't pass up on. The reason Hell is so infatuated with Lucifer isn't exactly clear. In fact, the Hell books in this layer in general aren't clear at all, and that's clearly by design. I really wrote that, wow. These books are supposed to be interpreted in many different ways, I think. And for that reason, I'm not going to delve into them. Instead, I highly encourage you to check them out and come up with your own interpretations. Leave them in the comments if you'd like. I think that would be really interesting to read. Also, subscribe. Fraud is a picturesque recreation of the new piece. However, it's full of illusions, non-Euclidean geometry, and moving everything. Exposure to the funky nature of Fraud causes souls to lose all sensory information and idea of what physical space they're in. The nature of Fraud means that almost nothing is known about it. Not even how it punishes its sinners is known. The Mirror Reaper is the exception to this. It seems like it's several husks mashed together in a deliberate fashion that exists within reflections. This is the only example known of the Mirror Reaper, and any conclusions drawn from it about the fate of other sinners in fraud should be taken with a heavy hand of salt. Before anyone comments about Mirror Reapers existing as Cybergrind, meaning that there must be more than one, Cybergrind is an artificial space created by the terminals so they can watch V1 fight forever for entertainment. I know that's confusing, so here's a TLDR. The terminals are sentient, and they're bored. They watch V1 fight for entertainment, and that's what the style meter is. They have enough data to create the Cybergrind, for infinite entertainment. Anyway, tangent over. Cybergrind Mirror Reapers are not real. There's only one known Mirror Reaper in Hell. The Mirror Reaper in 8.2 is clearly shown to be messing with V1, with it puppeting a fake V1 in the mirrors. And when I say puppeted, I mean puppeted. It literally is holding V1 on strings. Now this can lead people to assume that every V1 reflection is some sort of Mirror Reaper. It's more likely that these are just a reflection. You might be thinking, however, what about the secret ferryman encounter? One of those behaves like the Mirror Reaper and is only visible in the mirror. Great question. I had the exact same question, and I wish there was a more interesting answer. But I asked ultrakill Discord, and they basically said, it's just a cool mechanic for a cool boss, and there's no implications. Death catchers are clearly inspired by idols. It's said that distant eyes, heavily implied to be hell, watched the formation of idols with fascination and attempted to recreate it in its own way. However, the malice the creator, again, likely hell, seeped into the death catcher, caused it to crack open, and it formed the shape that we see in-game. Unlike the idol, death catchers can't protect people. They attempt to do so, but can only form weaker beings similar to the originals, but not the same from the blood of the dead. It pretends that these things are still alive and they can still be saved, when in reality, it's far too late. Geryon has been around for millennia, which is a very rare moment where a time scale is actually given for how long something in hell has been around. It's described as a failed experiment by an unknown force, again, heavily implied to be hell. It was made in an attempt to make a being with several consciousnesses in one. However, none of the people in Geryon can communicate with each other in any way whatsoever. But over time, they've learned to work together to achieve their goal of hunting as efficiently as possible, despite the limitations of their body. Its hunting is of interest, because unlike other demons, it doesn't hunt for sport. Rather, it seemingly hunts to free sinners from their suffering, and it uses its bow to achieve this. It can be implied that Leviathan is a successful attempt at creating something like Geryon, since Leviathan is formed from all the sinners in Wrath who give up trying to stay afloat in the ocean Styx and sink to the bottom, implying that perhaps hell can learn from its mistakes. It is a sentient being after all. After Gabriel's massacre of the Council of Heaven and sudden disappearance, Heaven has been thrown to the brink of civil war. The Providences are the fastest of the lesser angels, and as such they have been sent to attempt to find him. Because of how important this is, they have been granted the rare right of keeping their vision while in hell, breaking a sacred oath angels made to God after an unknown incident. While the incident is unknown, there are several possible reasons as to why God might have forbade the angels from witnessing hell. It's known that God is deeply ashamed of hell and wishes he could unmake what he has made. And perhaps it's simply the shame of its creation that caused him to forbid angels from looking upon it. Perhaps God only forbade angels from witnessing hell after he cast Lucifer down to hell in his moment of weakness. The action racking his conscience so hard, he decided no angel should look at what he has done. We can only speculate as to why the angels weren't allowed to see hell. Providence's bodies are made of pure light, which means their exact shape can't be determined. In fact, it would blind a human if they witnessed it. But V1's cameras seem to be able to make it out in at least some form. Their speed means Even V1 isn't fast enough to whiplash them or dodge their beam attacks. And I'm not just saying that to glaze V1. The terminal explicitly mentions even the V models aren't fast enough. Ours are angels that were so inspired by Gabriel's light, they decided to become his disciples. They're ashamed of their incomplete bodies with them missing an arm and only having one wing, so they carry around with them a useless golden arm to make themselves feel more similar to the archangels they look up to. Gabriel stuck to the older, simpler designs with his armor, while Heaven trended towards more glamorous and ornate designs. The powers followed Gabriel in his simplicity, but without his presence with him becoming the judge of hell, the powers slowly began adopting the vanity of Heaven. They sound feminine to humans, but they have no gender. However, masculine language is used as a sign of respect in Heaven, as a sign of their closeness to the Father. The powers are trained under Gabriel, and they fight incredibly similarly to him. However, they're inexperienced in combat, requiring them to vocalize their attacks to manifest them correctly, and they become entirely disabled upon being parried, leading them to become enraged out of shame. Powers take turns fighting in groups, not only to avoid friendly fire, but also to make it clear who gets the glory of the kill, which could imply some of Heaven's vanity being shown through the powers. The fraud layer is described as a depiction of the new piece, and this is shown with the town in 8.1 and the office layers in 8.2. There are some books that give us a ton of insight into the early stages of the new piece. After the fall of the Earth Movers, there was little resources. Despite this, it seems that humanity put aside their differences and worked together to take advantage of the opportunity caused by the shutdown of the Earth Movers after the long night. We see a new Earth Mover named 15HKUR, which was once the Earth Mover the author of the book called Home, and implies that the Earth Movers were roaming the Earth for a century. This is the only mention of the kind of timescale that the Earth Movers were on the planet for, so I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. The people of 15HKUR have established communications with 4 other communities of former Earth Mover inhabitants, and through communication and small blood donations, were able to reconstruct 15HKUR's tracking system that it used to track Earth Movers across the globe during the war. Using the tracking system and a map from the era of countries, which implies the final war in the new piece has made nations irrelevant, they have sent people out to attempt to contact nearby communities and survivors. There's a panel in the offices of 8-2 showing the different blood operating systems used by the blood-powered machinery. SmileOS 1.0 was the first blood-powered machine operating system. One person can fuel these without sustaining any real side effects, meaning they need a very small amount of blood to run, but the problem is they're very awkward and limited in their use. Blood is a scarce resource in the new piece, implied by how SmileOS is recommended to be used wherever possible, despite its shortcomings. SmileOS 2 is the more advanced pre-automaton machinery, implying that it's probably pre-Gutterman, since that's the first automaton that we're aware of. These machines are much more capable than SmileOS 1, but they need a lot more blood, requiring collection from small populations of people. Due to the scarcity of blood, these machines require a permit to use in the new piece. Finally, there are nocturnal systems. Little is known about these other than that they are wartime systems, and they require harvesting of living beings to sustain themselves. They are self-adaptive, with unknown limits, and should never be used. As an aside, the image used for the nocturnal system is very similar to the V1 in the title screen. While we don't know exactly what machines are using nocturnal, the combination of wartime machinery, active blood harvesting, unknown limits, and a seemingly total ban on any new nocturnal machines in the new piece, it can be inferred that most wartime machines are probably on nocturnal systems. And if that turns out to not be the case, at the very least, V1 is almost definitely on a nocturnal system. Perhaps they have been named nocturnal systems rather than SmileOS 3.0 due to the long night, and they're to never be used again, not only because of their high blood cost, but the fact that they caused the final war to get so out of hand, and nobody wants to run the risk of repeating that. I think that this is a very interesting little thing to speculate about. The new piece's resource scarcity is continued to be shown by the supermarket section in 8.2, with several posters telling people to be respectful of how much food they take and to repair their clothes before buying new ones, showing that yes, the final war is over, but no, the world has not fully healed yet. Things are still hard in the new piece. Everything isn't perfect. There's a panel in the offices that shows the words "extinct animal returns." Humanity, after the final war, managed to successfully clone pigs and cows, pre-war animals that presumably went extinct during the war. Another Earthmover community, MO200OS, also moose, managed to clone a pig, the fourth people to do so. The meat produced from these animals is said to be limited, and people are apprehensive about eating it since it's been so long since meat was a thing people had in their diets. So more Archangels got revealed in Fraud. We have Gabriel, Michael, Anu, Raphael, and probably Lucifer. Each Archangel has their own colour, and each one their own virtue. Michael has wisdom, Raphael has strength, Gabriel has will, Manuel has patience, and Lucifer kindness. We see coloured hook points for each of these angels too. Blue for will, green for patience, pink for strength, and yellow for wisdom. I think it's very interesting that after Gabriel slimed the entire Council of Heaven, someone was able to give the command to send the powers and the providences down to hell. Much more interesting, give them the command to defy God's will and keep their sight. The only thing with that kind of authority left in heaven must be an Archangel, no? What else could it be? The Council is dead. This implies that the death of the Council didn't include the death of the Archangels. The fact that Gabriel answered to the Council is also very interesting. Why would an Archangel, God's will, be subservient to a council of, presumably, not Archangels? It must have been set up by someone with equal or perhaps even greater authority than Gabriel. Only candidate that makes sense in my eyes is another Archangel ordered the creation of the Council. Now, we are deep into speculation territory at this point, and I'm going to go a little bit further. My little idea is perhaps Michael is the one to create the Council. Michael looks very similar to the Council. In fact, his design we see in-game is based off of old fan art for the Council from the Act 1 ending. Michael might potentially be the one who set up the Council. Definitely food for thought at the very least. I want to briefly mention Ulysses, as he is mentioned in the other Hellbook of this layer. Ulysses is another name for Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, which was also mentioned in one of the Hellbooks. This is notable, because Odysseus was a Greek king, like Minos and Sisyphus were the kings of lust and greed respectively. Now, this can lead people to assume that he might be the third prime soul, but I don't think that's very likely. Several reasons. There's very little time left in the game to really build up Odysseus as a character, and number two is the main reason people don't believe Lucifer Prime is going to be a thing. There's two reasons. A fake screenshot of Hikita saying that there'll be no Lucifer in the game, and a very easily misunderstood screenshot from Hikita suggesting that angels don't have souls, and when they die, they just disappear. Very easy to misinterpret, and that it is entirely possible Lucifer could become a prime soul.
Now let's really dig into this screenshot because it is very easily misinterpreted. It says that people are the exception to getting an afterlife, but that is a one-time thing. When a demon or an angel or a machine dies, they're gone. When a person dies, their soul is placed in either heaven or hell, and if they die after that, they're gone. Minos and Sisyphus both died, went to hell, and then were killed again by Gabriel, but still became prime souls. So if Lucifer can't become a prime soul, because when they die, they just disappear, Minos and Sisyphus can't become prime souls, because when they died a second time in hell, they just disappeared. Do you see the issue here? With all of this being said, it is very important to mention that these screenshots are many years old, and we shouldn't take several-year-old Hikita screenshots word for word. things can change. I'm not saying that either Lucifer or Odysseus will be the next Prime Soul, because we can't confirm anything for certain. But I will say, if it does end up being one of these two, my money's on Lucifer.
And that's probably all of the big things Fraud added. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a ton of little things as well, and many, many more things if you want to sink your teeth into the truly obscure lore this game has to offer. But this video is intended to catch you up to speed with the wider story of the game, and to generally share stuff that I think is interesting. If this did, in fact, interest you, I would highly recommend you go deeper and try finding out more about this game's lore. You never know. Maybe you'll be the one to come up with the next big theory. Thanks for watching.